Surprise, surprise. You picked a game where you won for me to analyze. Well, I didn't choose the game you picked. I chose a different one, but fortunately you still won. So you still look like a winner at the end of the game. This is MichaelKiyoe 700 versus AshiqMkv. Alright, so before I begin looking at your game, I just want to point out that you want to learn one opening and stick with it. If you do that, if you play the same opening every game, you'll know what strategies work, which strategies don't work, and it'll make the game a lot easier. Your rating will go up dramatically in a short period of time. So I'm going to suggest an opening, and I would like you to just stick with this opening. If you don't, I'm going to be watching, and I'm not going to analyze any more games. Okay? Deal. So the opening I suggest is King's Indian Fianchetto, and it looks like something like this. So if you open here, King's Pawn, King's Pawn, okay. Now, you want to have this structure here. This is most important. The bishop is in front of the king. You have your pawns, the rook, you're castled. The theory behind the King's Indian is that you are attacking at a diagonal, so you're still attacking the center. Another variation, you could simply just start out by opening up the pawn. Castling. You get the idea. If he moves here, at your stage, even this is better than just random pieces moving. Alright, so let's go to your game. You start with the king's pawn opening. White, again, just a reminder, should be on the offense, and black is always on the defense. So, and also another reminder is at the beginning of the game you want to castle as soon as possible. So you want to control the center of the board, you want to castle, and you want to make the most of your pieces. Those are the basic rules to chess. You move your pawn up to protect this pawn. That's a wasted move because now you're blocking in this bishop. You're blocking the queen from being able to move out, and this is a defensive move. It's not an offensive move. Alright. C2 to C4. And that's it's basically another defensive move. It's not doing much. You need to develop these pieces rather than moving so many pawns. Alright. You move another pawn. And another pawn. And I get it now. I see it. It's the Michael defense. You got the big M going. Yeah, I see it. You created a new opening. That's awesome. Alright, so he's got 1, 2, 3 pieces that are being developed. All of your major pieces are still in the back rank, so they're not doing much. Now you're bringing out a knight when, okay, you're developing, but you still need to develop these pieces. Your goal at the beginning of the game is to castle. Castle, castle, castle. And at the beginning of the game, you don't want to move the same piece more than twice. This guy's not doing anything either. He's going against the rules of basic chess, and he's not doing well either. Alright, now you've moved your king. You don't want to move your king because then you're not able to castle. Alright, and I don't know the strategy behind that move. He's moving his pawn into death trap. It's going to be lost. When you take with pawns, generally speaking, you want to take towards the center. And you take towards the center. Alright, now he's pushing his pawn. Maybe he wants to break up the middle here. He takes with the bishop. You move another pawn. He's moving his knight. Another pawn. Alright, so now he's got 3 pieces against this pawn. And you've got just your queen and your bishop. So an easy counter is just to move your pawn up. Kick this knight out. But instead you move your bishop over on the side to attack them. He takes, because he has more material on that piece, checking your king. You then attack with the king. You don't want to attack with the king. The king is the most precious piece on the board. You don't want to put him in a dangerous position because then you lose the game. He should be cuddled up here in the corner, away from everything. Now he's checking, and you're going after him with the king. The king is not the person to be attacking. Alright, so you exchange queens. You give a little relief on your end, so not as much attack. Now you check. He moves out of the way. You move your knight to the sides, and here's another basic rule. Knights are not good on the sides. You don't want to have knights on the sides of the board. You want to have them in the middle. He moves out. Now, this is an opportunity. Just a basic strategy would be to move this pawn up to fork these 2 knights. You move your knight to f2. He moves his knight, e5. Now you're pushing your pawn. Alright, so now you're kicking this knight out of the way. And you move your bishop. So your strategy here is to take out that rook. And he counters by defending. So you know your strategy. You want to go with your bishop. So the only thing that's protecting his bishop is this knight. You can get rid of that threat by pushing the pawn. And then that bishop's no longer defended. Now he moves his knight out of the way. He is attacking your pawn. You still can't move your knight out of the way because you'll lose your bishop. How are you going to defend that pawn? The best move would be bishop, or you could push the pawn, because if he takes, you take, and it's a win for you. All right. So you push, and then he moves back. Now, this is a clear mistake on Black's part. He moved his knight to an area that it's not defended. You could take it two ways. You could either take it with your bishop, or you could move this pawn up, forking these two pieces. Obviously, it's better not to give up your pawn and just take the knight. And you don't do that. You move your knight over here. So before moving any pieces, just a piece of advice would be to look at all of your guys, see if they're defended. If they're all defended, then look at the opponent's pieces and see if all their pieces are defended. If there's pieces that are just hanging, try to go after those. It only takes a second to look at them over. For instance, this pawn up here on f7, it's not being defended. This pawn on e7 is not being defended. Your pawn on b4 is not being defended. He could have taken your pawn, but he didn't look at that. He decided to move back instead. Alright, so now you're attacking the bishop. And he moves his pawn. You take his bishop. He takes with the knight. You move your bishop up, attacking that pawn that's not defended. Now he's giving away a piece. He's giving away the pawn. It's best to check with the knight, because then you can take the pawn. But you take with the bishop instead. Or, I'm sorry, it was best to take with the knight to check, and then you get the bishop. Alright, so you take with the bishop instead. You still have this knight check. He's still hanging that bishop. And you do. You check. He moves the king out of check. You eat. Now he could, after he moves the rook, he could trap your bishop. Let's see what happens. So he moves his rook out of the way. You move your knight. Your knight is attacking f7. He doesn't care. He's moving his knight. You take f7. He's attacking your knight on d5. So instead of moving your knight out of the way, you check, which is actually a better move because you can get this exchange with the rook. So good job. Now the king is forced to move. He chooses a7. You take the exchange by checking. He eats. Now you're still stuck here being attacked by the pawn. So what's the best move? The best move would be knight here. And then eventually getting this bishop down here to pin this knight. But you're going for an exchange. He can take your knight with the pawn. If he does that, you're okay with it, I guess, and you can take with the rook. Yeah, seems fair. Now he's attacking. This is his mistake. He's moving his knight to an area where it has nowhere to jump back safely. If you just push your rook up here, he has nowhere to go. He'll die. Or you could even just take the knight here. Oops. You take the knight. Now he's just trying to save. And at this point, again, you're way up in material. Really not much to analyze. But we can continue. You check. So your knight is being attacked, but you choose to check. So one thing to realize is after you check, your rook is going to be here. If he attacks your rook, how are you going to defend both the rook and the knight? And you can't. You're going to lose one of those pieces. You don't want to overextend your position. You want to maintain all of your pieces being defended, and then you can attack. So you don't want to rush that. Alright, so let's see, 36. And that's what happens. He goes after your rook. So at this point you are saying, fine, you can take my knight, but I'm going to get your rook and you're going to get my rook. Alright, so let's see what happens. Now he's letting you go. He doesn't want to exchange. He doesn't want to get rid of his rook. You need to move your knight out of the way, which you don't. You're more interested in taking out his knight. He takes, you take, whoa, 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 whoa. Now, you left your rook here, so he actually won in an exchange, but you're still up. You should just push this pawn up, but you check. Now again you're pushing him to exchange, but you're losing on the exchange. At this point, again, you're further ahead. It doesn't really matter. You can do that. Alright, so your move with the bishop, you should just come here and easy take. Oops. He can't catch you that fast. That's why bishops are better at the end game, because they can go across the board quicker than a knight can. Alright. And I think at this point you only had a minute left, so you were just kind of rushing, trying not to lose on time, which is understandable. Now, your bishop's protecting that square. And all you need to do is just push the king up here. And you can just promote here. Your pawn's going to promote quicker here than this pawn will down here. Alright. Check, and he's attacking your bishop, but you don't care. Bam! Alright. You're coming in with the queens. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but you can always just bring the queen down. Oops. And mate that way. But yours was a little more finesse. And you made it. Good job. Alright, so what did we learn from this summary? In openings, you're going to stick with the fianchetto. Right? You're going to get the fianchetto opening, and you're going to develop your pieces. Okay? Develop. Black's developing, white's developing. Oops. Oh. Alright. Well, you get the gist. Hope you enjoyed the video.